How's it going, everybody? So, the dichotomy of the stances. There's lots of talk about this character, whether it's balanced, whether the stances work as intended, or whether they should work differently. In general, some people are happy, others not so much. I think the hero is stronger than some might give him credit for, especially the staff mode, but there's also no denying that there are some severe drawbacks when playing him. So what I want to talk about today specifically is the approach that Ubisoft took in making the stances with massive weaknesses that are associated with their respective stance. In particular, that it was a conscious choice from them. It's not them not understanding what they were doing, but rather a design choice. We might not be agreeing with it, as I've outlined in my previous video talking about quicker in-chain stance switches, but this is what we have right now. And I want to showcase this by looking closely at two aspects of the kit. First, as you might have guessed already, hitboxes, and then the two bashes, as I've seen many demands of making the staff bash feintable. So staff mode hitboxes, not a single one of these moves has a bad hitbox. Lights, heavy, zone, running attack, dodge attack. All of them have long range and a great angle. There is zero doubt that you aren't supposed to hit multiple people with those moves. Especially the range is something that might throw people off, thinking themselves in safety when you are actually in reach of the MEDJAY. The only real property he's lacking on them is the unblockable. If any of those moves were orange, he'd probably rival JJ when it comes to dishing out damage in teamfights. I mean, he already dishes out a lot. Partly because his numbers are quite high because of the slow speed of them, but there's also no denying that the hitboxes play their part despite it only being blockable attacks. Oh, and don't forget the hyper armor spam. Yeah, let's go with that. It's also something people might not immediately realize what they're asking for. Hyper armor, huge hitbox, orange attacks with high damage. Potentially even in an infinite chain. I can see why Ubisoft didn't opt for that. And I'd also say making any of those moves unblockable would be a tad too strong. And then in direct contrast to that, we have the axe mode hitboxes, or lack thereof. I don't think there are many attacks that can rival some of those weapon trajectories, maybe Shaman in terms of reach. But regardless of the direct comparison to other heroes, it is very obvious that Ubisoft doesn't want you to be in that stance when fighting multiple people. The dodge attack is probably the biggest giveaway here. I've mentioned this multiple times in the past, but I really dislike when weapon models phase through players and don't do damage. It is unintuitive, to put it nicely. It really shouldn't happen. The real problem with axe stance in terms of hitboxes isn't really the fact that they aren't big sweeping ones, but rather that their range is really small, and with that comes the lack of forward movement. And it's not just the attacks, it's also really visible when looking at the bash. So let's do just that then, because bashes is the second big part I want to mention it. Let me remind you of the numbers of the axe shoulder bash. It is not a Legion kick variant, but a 500 ms bash on a 100 ms minimum input from the dodge. The last time we've gotten a bash like that was with Black Prior's release. And they've even tried to remove it from Conqueror in one of the TGs. That's how much they actually don't want to give us that specific timing. But in MEDJAY's case here, it's all about the emphasis on the 1v1ing. That style of bash is purely made for duels. And I mentioned the range, because if given more range, you could more easily use it as a confirmation tool in ganks. But they don't want that. That is the purpose of the staff stance bash. I see a lot of people demand it to be feintable, so it could be used as an opener. Ubisoft doesn't want the staff mode to be used in once, and thus have a viable opener. The staff grab is a ganking tool, and a good one at that, especially combined with a tier 2 feat that lowers an opponent's defense. As I said, I just want to make this really clear to everyone that they didn't just forget to give staff stance a viable opener for onesies. They chose not to give him that. The design choice for this character were two separate stances with their respective strengths and very, very apparent weaknesses. Since this is different to what we're used to, I thought it was important to point out. There are certainly things that need to be worked out and changed, but making suggestions that go against the design choice and thus are very unlikely to happen, where they are just a waste of time for everybody. And sadly, it might be perceived as Ubisoft not listening to the player base. So I don't know whether we weren't listening or them not making it absolutely clear why they chose this approach. But I hope that I did my part here now, and it's a little more obvious to you guys why MEDJAY is in the state that he currently is. Whether Ubisoft was too conservative on top of choosing very distinct stances, you can decide for yourself. Having said that, I hope the video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Laters everybody.